Hello everybody, welcome back to The Hobby Musician. We got a good one for you because today it's time for another deep thought. Well, if you're new to the channel, these episodes allow us to take some time and think about and talk about music in more broad terms. A lot of what we cover are just my opinions, my thoughts, my experiences, but we do the best we can to support them with evidence, and we highly encourage you to add your voice to the discussion. Make sure you head down in the comments and put in your thoughts. Well, I'm excited about today because it's another viewer-prompted episode. A while ago, we put up another episode of Deep Thoughts where I talked about my perspective on kind of the current state of where guitar gear is today. And I'll put a link to it up here because I spent the entire episode just focusing on one topic. I was only limiting myself to talking about tone. What is the tone that you can get out of different types of gear? And we put a lot of evidence and clips of showing that modeler units have come such a long way that in terms of tone, we really are at a time where there isn't a real difference. There isn't a clear winner when it comes to traditional amplifiers and effects or modeled amplifiers and model effects. Well, the cool thing was a good friend of the show, Richard, over at the Jam Space, added some thoughts to that show where he pointed out one of the factors that does play a role in what types of gear musicians choose. And so I wanted to make that the focus of today's episode. Now, if you haven't already checked out Richard's channel, they're doing some great stuff that dovetails perfectly with the kind of stuff that we're doing here at the channel. So after you subscribed here, click the link to Richard's channel. I'll have it down in the description, and make sure you check his stuff out and subscribe to him too. Well, the factor that we're talking about today is comfort. And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about comfort just physically. I'm not talking about picking a guitar that is physically comfortable to play. It has the right curves and it has the right, scale length and finger spacing. I'm talking about comfort more broadly. If you think about the big reasons why people get into music in the first place, a lot of the reasons deal with emotion. A lot of people get into playing music for themselves because they remember how it felt. You might have a fond memory of the first concert you ever went to, and seeing everything that happened and hearing everything that happened connected with you. It made an impact. And that impact could prompt you to pursue music for yourself. It's this comfort that also connects and drives a lot of what we as the musicians seek out for our own devices, our own instruments, the gear we use and stuff like that. And this is where I didn't really cover in our previous episode. There is a very real chance, and Richard pointed this out, that a musician could walk into a store and could walk up to the wall of amplifiers and the display case of all the modelers, and they could look at it and say, okay, fine, I hear what you're saying. I could get the same tone out of the amp or the helix or whatever unit you're looking at. But they could look at that and they say, but the amp triggers something. They remember back to the inspirational artist that they wanted to emulate, that they really get inspired from. And they could say, but that artist used this amp. So if you're telling me I could get the same tone out of this plastic box with computer buttons, or I could get the same tone out of this amplifier, I'm going to go with the amplifier because it does something additional. It goes beyond the tone. And that's really what I'm talking about. And that is a valid and real factor that I want to encourage people out there to think about. Now, that doesn't mean every player is going to have the same kinds of emotional connections with things. And I certainly have some emotional connections, but not others. For example, I don't have a lot of emotion myself personally. I don't have a lot of connections to necessarily specific models of basses or guitars. I just don't. I walk into a store, and whenever I'm purchasing an instrument, I look for and I feel for the playability. So color choice, sure, I'll choose certain colors if I can, but if I don't have the option, I'm not going to get bent out of shape if I don't have the right color. Or if I'm deciding between this brand or that brand, a lot of times just close my eyes and which one feels better to play. But I also want to make it clear, I do have a pedal board. I want to let that sink in for a second. Regular viewers of the channel know that for the majority of what I do, I use modelers. I use modelers to record these episodes. I use modelers, 90% of the time when I'm out there gigging. I use, the Line 6 Helix. I use different things to help me get that tone. And so to hear me say I have a pedal board that I love might seem counterintuitive, but I do have some emotional connections to physical stomp boxes, the pedals, those bright colors, and specifically, I can still remember some of the first posters, the posters of like announcements in Guitarist magazine where you would see the different artists and they'd be on stage, hair flying, lights flashing, just a stage floor full of these bright, to me, it evoked like this bubblegum candy store. Like every single pedal was bright neon, this color or that color. And there was tape all over them to show, the artist had put there. And I remember how that made me feel. To me, that was rock star to have all these pedals. So when I first started getting into it, I wanted pedals. I could only afford like the cheapest of the cheap. So I was getting these like Boss pedals for $50. But they were the bright colors. And when I had them, it wasn't all about the tone for me. I later discovered pedals and I discovered some of the models and the different units that I have that sounded better than those pedals. Sure, the tone was better, but I love those pedals. They connect with me on a deeper level than just tone alone. And that's really what I'm talking about. I want to encourage everybody out there, when you're deciding on a purchase, when you're deciding on maybe a rig to build and take out there. I'm speaking to the young guitarist. If, she's out there thinking about what kind of music does she want to make? What artists inspire her? What does she want to take this passion and do with it? I never want to say, hey, the only thing you should be thinking about is just strictly tone, and you should run out there and buy a modeler and never. That's not what I'm trying to do. And that wasn't what I was trying to do in the past episode. So that's what this is all about. Don't forget to think about and connect with your own feelings. You're not supposed to like this or like that. You're supposed to like exactly what you like. So hopefully you got something out there, and I want to thank Richard again for adding to this conversation and allowing us to keep talking about these factors. So thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, play on, my friends, play on.